Episode 3 of The Acolyte begins with a flashback. In the forest we meet our protagonist and her twin sister as children, and the writing quickly gives us some exposition to establish that one sister is nice while the other is a psychopath, and it's very subtle. We only know this because the nice one likes animals, whereas the psychopath likes to torture them.
Let it go, May. Stop!
Now, I know the scene seems pretty harmless on the surface, and it might sound a bit whiny, maybe even over the top, to argue that it could be one of the worst scenes in all of Star Wars. After all, there are very strong contenders for that title, like, for example, any random 30-second clip of that movie. But hopefully by the end of the video, I will have convinced you that this scene fully deserves its place among the all-time greats. I've actually been putting off making this video, because The Acolyte is already so universally despised that criticizing it now feels almost too easy, like murdering a youngling. But recently it came to my attention that Disney claimed the copyright on my most successful video, over a few seconds of background music, also that they could make a quick $100. And so suddenly I don't feel quite so bad about piling on the Acolyte hate.
After all, why not? Why shouldn't I?
Let me say up front that my problem with the scene has absolutely nothing to do with the child actresses. Their performances can feel a bit shaky, but honestly that's not their fault. The dialogue is so terrible that I'm not sure anyone could have made it work. And more importantly, what really elevates this scene from just bad to a genuine contender for the worst scene in Star Wars happens at the very end, and it involves this character.
Now, come with me.
But we'll get to that. First, let's take a quick look at that dialogue.
Bunta tree so beautiful.
Okay, so this one likes nature.
Padosha, it's dangerous.
Alright, so this one is worried, but she didn't seem worried before. In fact, she seemed pretty casual about coming here.
When I can't find you, I look here.
So we are 5 seconds in, and the writers are already fumbling the characterization. This sister is simultaneously telling us she comes here often,
I look here.
and seems completely relaxed. But now she's also supposed to be the cautious, protective sister.
It's dangerous.
Alright then, what does the other sister reply?
Only if we eat it.
What? Did I miss something? Is there a line of dialogue missing here?
Bunta tree so beautiful. Padosha, it's dangerous. Only if we eat it.
This exchange is so weird. Apparently the real danger in coming here is that she might accidentally eat the tree. Of course that is probably not what the writers wanted to convey, but it is what they wrote. Well, fair enough, hopefully she remembered not to eat the tree next time she visits. That's a pretty killer argument. Nothing the sister can really say to that, so instead she just stares into the middle distance and goes back to torturing animals.
Only if we eat it.
Now we reach the core of the scene. One sister is using her powers for something cruel, and the other tries to stop her.
Stop!
It's not subtle, but fine, it's efficient, and establishes their relationship.
Why do you always have to do things like that?
Then we learn that the nice sister running away is a recurring thing.
Why do you always run off alone?
And again, the dialogue is extremely on the nose, but at least it's pretty clear. Or rather, it would be clear, except that the director drops the ball here. Obviously, since we have been analyzing every line of this scene, we are not confused about who is who. But at normal speed I was confused, like...
Why do you always have to do things like that?
And when I look closer, I realized why. It is the first time we are being introduced to these characters, and they look very similar, and they are dressed the same. So in this situation, identifying who is who can be a bit tricky. And it becomes even trickier when the director breaks one of the most basic rules of filmmaking, the 180-degree rule. The idea is that during a conversation, the camera should always stay on one side of an imaginary line between the characters. That way, one character always appears on the left side of the frame, and the other always appears on the right. It is one of those invisible rules of filmmaking that we rarely notice, but it is crucial for keeping the scene visually clear. And the rule is so basic, so universal and important that you can jump into almost any movie at any random moment and you'll see that it's being respected. Now, if a director breaks the rule, it usually needs to be very deliberate. For example, in this scene in The Shining, Stanley Kubrick breaks the 180 rule to create a sense of unease. But if you're going to break the 180-degree rule by accident, maybe don't do it in a scene where the characters are literally identical twins wearing the same clothes. At first the nice sister is on the right looking left, and the psycho is on the left looking right. After the cuts we still have psycho on the left and nice on the right, but then suddenly we're on the other side of the line. Now the nice one is on the left looking right and the psycho on the right looking left. So the scene was already struggling with proper characterization, but now even the basic rules of filmmaking fail us. It is in fact so baffling that it almost feels like the technical team themselves got confused about who was who. Then they start walking through the forest, which resets their positions. And because their characterization is still unclear, they have no choice but to do this thing where they say each other's names out loud so that we know who is who.
Oh, she.
And it is my understanding that this specific moment is already widely discussed and mocked on YouTube, but I will say that the poem is actually cute.
I give you you, and you give me.
The only thing is that it's trying so hard to be cute that it becomes cringy. And also, the sister who was in a hurry to go home is now the one who wants to stop walking.
Can we stay here a little longer? Let's go home. Oh, she. I'm with you.
So that is already the second time she does something inconsistent, and her characterization is truly all over the place. And then, seemingly out of nowhere, this new character enters.
What are you doing here? It is not safe out here.
Sorry, Mother Koril.
But Mother Koril, I don't understand. I thought it was only dangerous if we ate the tree. And Mother Koril is in a hurry to leave.
Now, come with me. Quickly.
Which, if you think about it, makes the logistics of the scene feel a bit artificial. Because if she was in such a hurry, then why did she only reveal her presence when she was this close to the twins? And again, it may sound like nitpicking, but let's put a pin in that. I promise you it will be worth it. And finally it is revealed that a Jedi was hiding behind a tree the whole time. And then the scene is over. Or so I thought, because we actually come back to it in episode 7. And that is when the scene downgrades from just bad to actually laughable. First of all, redoing the scene is a massive red flag in itself. The Witcher had a similar thing where a scene plays several times across different episodes, and I honestly don't know why these shows do that. If I were a cynical man, I would say that it feels as if the showrunners saw good filmmakers do it and thought, hey, that's cool, I want to do that too. But they fail to understand that, much like breaking the 180-degree rule, it is something you can only do when you actually know what you're doing. But in the Acolyte there is no reframe. The scene is just playing out exactly the same, even if we are being charitable and say that the second time we are seeing the scene from the Jedi's perspective. Well, first of all, that wouldn't be very interesting, but even that argument doesn't hold, because we already knew he was there from the scene in episode 3. So what is the new information that we get from replaying the scene? Well, we see that the Jedi is walking in the forest and hiding, and oh wait, no, we already knew that. Do we at least get some new dialogue?
Ain't your tree so beautiful?
Okay, so no. And oh my god, we get the whole thing again, almost the entire scene.
Why do you always have to do things like that? Why do you always run off alone?
Are they just like reusing the same footage as in episode 3? No, here is a variation. We see that the Jedi is still walking in the forest. I repeat, is still walking in the forest. The replaying of this scene just keeps paying dividends. And yeah, so that is pretty bad, but there is also a version of this where I'm just a crazy person overanalyzing a scene that doesn't deserve it. I mean, at this point, you might still wonder why I was motivated to make this video at all. Well, it's coming. You remember how the scene ends when Mother Koril arrives, right?
What are you doing here?
And you may remember that earlier we pointed out how the setup of the scene felt a bit artificial, and that it would have been much more natural for Mother Koril to call them from afar, rather than sneaking up on them like that. Well, now we get a new angle on the scene, and so we'll finally get to see how that actually happened. We don't see her anywhere yet, but she should be coming any second now. Any second now. And there she is. What was that?
And below lies the sea. I give you you.
You have to imagine the actress waiting for her cue behind the tree. The director probably told her, you come out when they say, I give you you, okay?
I give you you.
This shot cannot be real. It looks like she's entering a theater stage from behind the curtains. It's like we are watching behind-the-scenes footage that somehow made it into the final cut. And obviously this ridiculous moment is really just the cherry on top of the other problems. So the reason why I am submitting this scene as a contender for the worst scene in Star Wars is because of what it symbolizes. This is what giving up looks like, at every level. I may be mistaken, but it seems as if anyone involved that truly cared about the series, they wouldn't have let this happen. Moments like this only happen when the writers care so little about what they're writing that they think, yeah well, we'll just replay the scene word for word with no interesting reframe, and maybe throw in a few shots of the Jedi walking around so it's technically different. Then the director thinks, yeah, well, I broke the 180-degree rule because I wasn't paying attention, and I told the actress to hide behind the tree and walk out like that, but who cares? The writing is bad anyway, so let's just film this quickly and move on to other projects. And the actress is probably thinking, okay, I guess I'm supposed to hide behind the tree. It's a bit clunky because I'm supposedly in a hurry, but hopefully they won't keep the shot of me literally stepping out from behind it. But at the end of the day, she's just doing her job. It's not her fault if the writer and director don't care. And finally, adding insult to injury, apparently they spent millions just to build the forest. So you almost have to feel for the set design team, who put all that effort into creating the environment, only for it to be used like this. Of course, arguments could be made against some of the points I've raised. For example, the confusion about whether it's dangerous to go outside, and the whole eating the tree thing. Well, in a well-written show, you could argue that she's just seeing the world through a child's eyes, while the adults know the real danger, but only told the girls a story to keep them away from the truth. And regarding the strange filmmaking choices, like breaking the 180-degree rule and blurring the line between who is who, well, you could argue that it's intentional too, that it reflects the sisters' intertwined destinies, that one will eventually take on the mantle of the other. Likewise, you could argue that there's a good reason Mother Koril sneaks up on the girls. Maybe she's trying to remain discreet so she doesn't alert the Jedi. But at the end of the day, this kind of thing comes down to goodwill. If you have a lot of goodwill toward a piece of media, then you tend to trust the writing and directing. And so when something looks like a plot hole or a strange characterization, you assume it will be explained later, or that it's a deliberate artistic choice. But a show has to earn that goodwill. And unfortunately for the Acolyte, it has so many clumsy moments scattered throughout. They just pile on that eventually the goodwill runs out. And once that happens, anything that looks like a mistake will be believed to be a mistake, and people will not be interested to hear convoluted reasons as to why it's actually not a mistake. And so no, it's not that the psycho sister is a complex, four-dimensional character who is somehow worried but also completely chill at the same time. No, she's just poorly written. Honestly, I do feel bad for the people involved in creating this, and I feel bad for adding to the negativity surrounding this show. It cannot be easy to see so many people dislike or even despise something you created.
I hate doing this. I don't use social media very much anymore.
As a small YouTuber, I have a few haters too, and so I know how difficult it can be to deal with it from a mental health perspective, because they can be incredibly violent. Jokes aside, while I barely get any truly negative comments directed at me as a person, the few that I do get, well, they still hurt a bit, so I cannot imagine how she dealt with it. I would have absolutely gone mad in her position.
And this really affected me when I first got the job, because it's just not something, even though I anticipated it happening, it's not something you can fully understand what it feels like until it's happening to you.
So while I don't think it is very wise on her part, I can understand why the showrunner would get defensive about the internet backlash against the Acolyte, and dismiss the whole thing as haters trying to get their coin. She said, talking about YouTubers, that the content being made about Star Wars will be more impactful than actual Star Wars. And in the case of the Acolyte, I actually agree. Except that she seems to be lamenting that Star Wars belongs to the haters rather than the creative people. But I would reply that it's not my fault if the post-mortem of the Acolyte is more interesting than the Acolyte itself. Is there a toxic atmosphere in some areas of YouTube that will dunk on anything remotely creative that doesn't align with their pre-existing view of what Star Wars should be? Well, absolutely, and that is not ideal.
The hyper-divisiveness of the time that we live in, that is driven, I would say at this point, by echo chambers of thought and algorithms that reinforce our biases. And I think that applies to everybody.
But the truth of the matter here is that the Acolyte is so amateurish on so many levels of production that it becomes easy cannon fodder. You already know that some angry guys on YouTube will have a field day tearing the series apart, and they won't even need particularly compelling arguments, because the show is so bad that its flaws are already self-explanatory. So the problem with The Acolyte is not the female leads and not even the controversial views it presents about the Jedi. The real problem with The Acolyte is that it is so poorly constructed and nonsensical that one can only wonder how it was allowed to happen at all. How did otherwise talented people end up making this? So, if by YouTube commenters reshaping Star Wars, the showrunner means that, after watching videos like this, the next directors will remember to respect basic filmmaking rules or writing dialogue that actually makes sense, then sure, I'm happy to help reshape Star Wars. And because Disney has already claimed copyright on one of my earlier videos, I do have to scoff a little when she suggests that mean YouTubers are making their coin at the expense of the poor creative studios. The truth is that Disney might very well claim the copyright on the video you're watching now, and there is literally nothing I can do about it, so we know who actually holds the power here. In the end, that statement that content being made about Star Wars will be more culturally impactful than actual Star Wars sounds very pessimistic and also cynical, especially coming from someone who had $230 million to realize her vision, while YouTubers have a microphone and an internet connection. If you cannot make something more impactful than them, well, maybe more time should have been spent in the writing room. But I do not want to fall into the trap of getting angry at individuals, because the failure here is systemic rather than personal.
I'll continue to process this for a long time.
As long as decision makers prioritize easily consumable content over well-written shows like Andor, then studios will keep churning out slop like this. But you know, blaming the decision makers is actually another trap, because at the end of the day, their literal job is to produce content that people will watch. And so the very sad truth is that the audience, meaning us, are partly responsible for the situation. It is very depressing, but in terms of viewership numbers, Andor barely performed better than The Acolyte. It is a bit cliché to say it, but every minute watched is a vote, and if we do not vote for art, then eventually it will be replaced entirely by content. Thank you for watching, please consider subscribing, the link to my Star Wars playlist should be on your screen now.